Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Chelsea. I serve as the program manager for Gateway to the Rockies Opioid Council, Region 10, also referred to as GROC. Today, we have our first advisory committee meeting of 2026. We do have a pretty easy agenda because our executive committee agendas are starting to line up with our full council agendas. So I already went ahead and took attendance. We do have a small group today. Hopefully some more folks join us. So they are going to start off in the executive committee meeting with a kind of 15-minute first year feedback for the program manager. That would be me. So that will be facilitated by the Deputy County Manager, Kate Newman. That is who I directly report to. So they will start off with that. Then we'll go into general updates around contracting. And I think this one is a little bit more up to date. So at this point, almost every single one of our contracts has started. JCMH, the capital project for Soteria, is looking to start February 1st. We're almost done with that contract. The City of Lakewood Police Department, we are in some pretty serious red lines, but I'm optimistic that we will come to some agreements and they will have a February 1st start date. And then Jefferson County Sheriff's Office does have an amendment pending for the January 26th meeting. We'll talk about that today. Other than that, almost everybody started by December 1st. We have that January 1st start date. And we did launch our eUNA grant management portal yesterday. So the grantees are getting in there to submit their December invoices, and that will be a streamlined place for them to do their invoices, their quarterly reporting, request budget amendments. We'll just have so much better tracking and organization of our grantees.
Chelsea, Lindsay mentioned from Resilience that the UNA system is great. So yeah.
Yay! I'm so excited. Yeah. The Stedman Group has their National Opioid Settlement Conference. The council did approve 5 folks to go on sponsorship, including me. I was actually an invited speaker to this, so my registration will be free. So for the 4 people who did submit interest and were selected, I only had 4 people actually submit interest. They will be registered on Monday. I just want to run these names by the executive committee before I get them registered. So that would be Linda Behringer from Just Living Recovery, an advisory member, Lori Spurgeon, the assistant director for Denver Recovery Group, one of our grantees. There will be 1 representative from Recovery Works, and then Nina Shepard from Monarch Recovery. So that is super exciting. Then there's an update on the letter of support request for regions 1, 5, and 14. They did an infrastructure update. I should pull up the meeting materials packet. That way I could show folks the letter. So this group, I didn't end up updating that. I should probably fix that for them. They ended up taking out, it's region 1 is the applicant and they are co-applying with regions 5 and 14. They didn't end up doing legal assistance as part of their plan. The 3 regions decided just to focus on evaluation, technical assistance, and pilot and impact evaluation for each of their regions. So that would be $440,000 as $115,000 for each GROC to do their cross analysis. So that letter of support was submitted. There were letters of acknowledgement for the statewide evaluation project, GROC 4, with Omni Institute as an implementing organization. As a reminder, letters of acknowledgement do not hold a formal position. It is very general, matter-of-fact, objective language. So there is a disclaimer of conflicts of interest that we currently have a contract with Omni, and it just describes that we are aware they are applying for $500,000 for 2 years to do statewide evaluation framework. University of Colorado Denver Anschutz is also doing a statewide data project. They are requesting $282,182 for 2 years. I did speak with Jack and Jamie at the state that, hey, I'm getting like 2 or 3 statewide data projects. I have letters of acknowledgement. They're not support, just so you're aware. And they said that was fine. On the Centers for Health, Work, and Environment, Colorado School of Public Health applied for their Colorado Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative, $556,594 over 2 years. And then a Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, applied for Future Syringe Access Program Summit. It was $750,000 for 2 years. I did speak with Michael Miller before drafting this letter of acknowledgement because this is a very large number. And I want to make sure that their work is relevant to Region 10. Michael Miller confirmed that. So I went ahead and did that letter of acknowledgement, again, not holding a formal position. And then the last letter of acknowledgement I drafted was Colorado Department of Early Childhood, CDEC, Family Resource Center Association in Illuminate, Colorado. Again, $750,000 over 2 years. And again, just a letter of acknowledgement. So those were the updates there. Any questions, comments, concerns on those? Cool. Okay, so the next update, and this is where I want to get folks' feedback, is Jefferson County Sheriff's Department does have a budget amendment that they are requesting. So their initial application requested 4 long-range wireless gateways for $3,800. In contracting, they revised their budget to 22 long-range wireless gateways for $20,900. There's 2 reasons that this has to go to full council for review is that the conditionally approved budget at the June 23rd meeting was $537,582 structured over 2 years, with year 1 being $284,881. Oh, that would just be for a 2-year period. If they fund 50 units in year 1 and then conditionally fund potentially more units in year 2, with the 4 to 22 long range wireless sensors and that $3,000 to $20,000 difference, their year 1 budget is $196,147. And then the year 2 budget could be $108,625, or if we do fund the additional units, it'd be $255,410. So the actuals that 2-year is like $100,000 more. But if we do fund all 100 units, it's actually less than the conditional award. I will pause for comments and feedback if this group would recommend that the council accepts this budget amendment, if they have concerns about it.
I have a couple questions. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Thank you. So tell me again, I feel so naive. What is a long range wireless gateway? What is the function of it?
So their award is for biometric monitoring bracelet for inmates to monitor their vitals in real time as they're detoxing. So these long range sensors are like part of how that works. That way they don't have to be like next to the hub. And some of the items just were not scalable. Like there's like a minimum number of items that you have to get. Whether you get 50 units or 100 units, there's a minimum number of items that you have to get. And with the long range sensors, it could be 22, it could be 10. They won't know until they actually contract the vendor, get into the system and see how the connection works in the jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my next question was, why such a big difference? Did they discover that there was a higher need, or from going from 4 to 22? You know, what's
I don't have that answer for you, and I have not been able to get that answer. The only thing I can think of is with the 50 unit to 100 units, that some items were scalable, some items were not. They genuinely thought they only needed 4, and then upon researching the vendors more, once they got the award, they learned that they probably need more. And so they are requesting the 22 up to $20,000. And they keep reassuring me that they might only get 10 for like $10,000, but they won't know until they're contracted and the vendor actually gets in the jail.
okay? And it's one jail that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you for that
I'm
clarification.
confused. I'm confused about how it goes from I see the 4 to 20 up to 22, but then how does that all figure into 50 units over 2 years? I don't get the
So
chain there.
the long range sensors are part of the 50 units. So when we're talking about 50 units, we're talking about 50 wristbands. And so they might need 4 long range wireless sensors for the 50 wristbands. They might need 10 long range sensors for the 50 wristbands. It doesn't matter if they have, I guess it does kind of matter if they have 50 units or 100 units, because those would be spread out across the jail. And so how far across the jail are they spread out? Are they in the east wing, the west wing? Are they in both wings? And then do they talk to each other over Wi-Fi in all of those
Okay,
different
so-
wings?
So the gateway is the actual hub or the router or whatever you want to call it
Yeah,
for all these wristbands.
yeah.
I get it now.
Any questions, comments, concerns, ready to make a recommendation?
I don't know if this is I don't know if this is a comment or a concern, but I do know the Jefferson County Jail has had several deaths due to overdose. Due to overdose. So I don't know if that's the and there's some lawsuits going on over the whole thing. So I don't know if this will help prevent that. The deaths, I mean.
So the
I don't know.
award is already approved. The award is already approved, so the program is happening. It's just the total over the 2 years has changed. It went up this much to this much, but the total conditional award cap is less. So do you want
Do
to?
you mean it's less than what we actually approved the award to be?
Yeah, so this is
The 451, yeah. Well, in my mind, if they have a minimum requirement and they're not asking for more money than we already approved, I don't know why we wouldn't approve it.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like there's a choice in the number
Yeah,
of gateways they get. So
yeah, it would definitely affect the efficacy of the program. Like this number right here, because there was a potential that the 2-year fund was only going to be 284, but now the minimum amount the award will be is 304. So that the minimum amount of the award changed. That's why it has to go to the council. But because this is so much lower, I think this is fine.
I agree, and I know this was one of the requests that I reviewed when I was on the council, and I mean, to me, it makes sense that that this would just go forward. It's not that much of a difference dollar amount wise, and it's still less than they had originally approved. So in my mind, yes, it should just go forward like this.
I agree as well. And thank you for the explanation. I wasn't sure what we were approving or agreeing to, so thank you for that.
Perfect. All right, so this next part, and then I did see Andrea's comment in the chat that she agreed with this. I am gonna put Sharon into the lobby and I will call you back shortly. All right, so the next part of the agenda focuses on what I think is an emergency fund request. The council still has to talk about this. Is that Sharon Hawkins from Jeffco Public Schools is making a funding request. She currently serves as the substance use prevention coordinator for Jeffco Public Schools. She's an advisory committee member of GROC. Her position has been eliminated in recent budget cuts. So she only has until the end of this school year to close out her position. She did some math that her current full-time FTE annual salary is $119,711 without fringe benefits. She is proposing a 2-year phase-out program at 0.6 FTE, annual salary $71,827, fringe and benefits $22,266 for a total annual salary of $94,093. I did not do this math right. That's an annual. So this would be 100,000. I'm so bad at math, guys. I'm so sorry. Because it's 2 years. So it would be $100,000 from GROC and $100,000 from the local share Jefferson County. To do, again, like I said, a 2-year phase out program. So it'd be a matching award. That way she can phase out her position and disseminate her role across the health support staff at the individual schools. To me, the council has not yet defined how we want to use the emergency fund, and we need to be very cautious because whatever we do sets a precedent. To me, a rapid budget cut in a 1 year, $100,000 is a little bit higher than what I would expect an emergency fund to be, but we can make it work. For her to phase out her position, that way there's still infrastructure and school substance use prevention. That makes sense to me for an emergency fund. This could also go through special interest projects. The only precedent that we have for that is the JCMH Soterra project, which is capital, and there were time constraints and when they applied for their loans in the capital. So I think we have a good precedent there. I think putting this in special interest projects is a little less boundless, a little bit hard to define, leaves gateways a little bit more open for other projects to go through special interest that might not necessarily be what we want to use that for. I will go ahead and open the floor for funding. Oh, one more thing. So the Jefferson County Opioid Task Force is making a recommendation of priorities to the Board of County Commissioners in March. And Sharon would have to apply through a competitive RFP for that award. And that would not be ready in 2026. So GROC would fund 1 year with a condition that she applies for this second award. And even if she doesn't get it, that still gives her 1 year to phase out her position instead of like 6 months. Floor is open for discussion.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions because I could foresee that being a question from the council, why does she need 2 years to phase out her position since she knows it's already happening, so she has the rest of this year and then, into next year. It makes more sense to me now that you're saying that we would only be funding, half of that from the emergency fund or whatever fund is decided on. And then it would be up to the council to approve an additional year to phase that out. I mean, I'm sure that the council would be interested in seeing, kind of statistics from what she has done in her position. So I think that would be important to kind of have prepared and bring forward for the council. Because I understand, school budgets are very tight, having been on a school board, I totally get that. But, there also has to be a reason why they would choose to eliminate, a position, has it been successful, in actually, statistically reducing, substance use. So I foresee, the council asking some questions on that. So it might be worthwhile to have some information ahead of time.
Yeah, so what would happen is it goes here and it goes to the executive committee. And if executive committee thinks it should go to full council, then they could say, we want to see all of this information at the January 26th full council meeting. They could say, we don't think this is ready to go to full council yet. We want to see all of this additional information at the February 9th executive committee meeting. So there will be a lot of back and forth, very similar to the Sotera Landing proposal. It could just be like they want to send it to full council and then full council just continues to ask questions and it moved through that way. It will always come back here. I don't have any hard evidence that this is the case, but my guess is supplantation is kind of playing into this, where when you have to make choices of budget cut and you know that opioid dollars exist for substance use prevention, you're going to encourage people to go after that money so you can save your funds where there are no alternative funds. That's kind of what I think happened here.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, if they know the dollars are available. And I'm just saying, I don't feel one way or another about about it. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, it's really important, that schools, do their part in helping, students, avoid substance use and everything. I think it's an important position. So, I mean, I think it's good to go forward. So, Dr. Chelsea, is your question more like which fund we think it should potentially come from, or just whether or not it should move forward with the
Both.
Okay. When was this decided on by public school at Jeffco? Do you know?
I think last month.
Okay, so it is a recent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that case, knowing that this wasn't something they knew was coming, or maybe Sharon didn't know it was coming, in my mind, that kind of leans more towards emergency funds. But I also think that, executive council probably has more of a handle on the different funds and how they should be used. And you do obviously as well. So, but I think it's worth bringing forward, having that discussion about which fund it should come from. I know Sunny's on the call. I'm not sure Sunny, what you think about this being kind of in a position at Clear Creek where, a lot of this is covered by you. So I'm just curious about your thoughts too.
Hi, Erica. Like the substance use prevention coordinator position, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's kind of covered, like my position doesn't cover that, but we utilize more of our school health professionals in that sense to work kind of with that tier 1 supports for our students. And that's through another grant that we have called School Health Professionals that covers that position for us. Yeah, so we really don't have like a substance use prevention coordinator so much in our district, but we kind of do utilize different positions to support what that position would be supporting.
And so that is what Jeffco Public Schools is proposing. My understanding is that Sharon is central to all of them. So she develops the curriculum, makes sure that everyone is on the same page, most up to date. And that her fear is by just putting the work onto the health professionals without real infrastructure built, is that the work will become decentralized and people will end up with like different materials on different tracks and different pacings. And so that's why she's proposing this kind of more structured phase out to build them that infrastructure to stay on track. Do you have a position on like emergency funding, special interest projects, if this should advance to exec committee or full council?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Well, I do understand. Like, I think that having a coordinator to kind of oversee it, which is kind of what I do as the director of teaching and learning, I do oversee our school health professionals to ensure that we're using the same curriculum, that, you know, we're providing the same structures within the schools that we have school health professionals in. So I do think that that is an important piece for of what she's looking, you know, for this position that she's looking to fill. I do agree with that.
Do you think doing like a one, even if we did like, if GROC funded 1 year, which is 100,000, on the condition that they still pursue Jeffco for the second year, and if she doesn't get it, she still has 1 year to build that infrastructure, that's better timing than 6 months?
Yeah, it would really allow her to kind of build that, like, help with developing all of those, you know, coordination pieces and ensuring that the people who are taking them on are ready to take them on if it was for a year.
Awesome.
Yeah, I definitely agree that 6 months is not enough time in a school district the size of Jeffco to make any dent in having a plan for next year. So I do think it's important to at least have 1 year to do that, if not the 2.
I agree that 1 year makes sense, but not so sure about 2 years. That seems excessive in some ways. I mean, if the a task is to create a program that's self-sustaining, so to speak, or you know, it looks different than it has, then that's the project, and that's a year and a half to do that is sufficient, I think. I also think the questions are at hand though, as to what has been the success of this and why, how, you know, how has it looked and what would it look like going forward? So I think those are questions that need to be answered. But and then regarding the question of whether it's an emergency fund or a special interest, when I read the definitions of the two, I feel like it fits more into the emergency fund because the definition, it says for existing projects with immediate financial needs. So I don't know, that somehow that seems to in my head to fit in better than with special interest says time sensitive, strategic, or pilot opportunities. So it's not completely clear one way or another, but if I had to choose, that's what I would choose. But I also think, Chelsea, to what you said at the beginning, that we don't have a precedent, and this is a little bit risky, not risky, but funding positions, you know, that have been eliminated, and
Yeah,
that, you know, that really opens a huge door.
it's so risky. Like even with special interest projects, I get maybe 2 emails a day saying we would like to apply for special interest projects. And I'm like, that your project is not a special interest project. It's just a regular project that should wait for the RFP. Like you don't have any timing constraints. It's not capital, which does require specialized review and processes. And then now I'm kind of becoming a gatekeeper to the mechanism. And so I'm still providing people with, I'm like, here's a template. Like your biggest hurdle is going to be justifying why it should go outside the RFP. It's still going to come to this group until we can develop, I guess, more examples of what that would look like. So I can be a gatekeeper. But we are kind of opening ourselves up to a review burden. And ultimately, if this group shuts it down, it would probably still go to the executive committee just with the timing of meetings, but we can still shut things down. And if this group shuts it down, I don't think the executive committee would continue a review. They would take this recommendation strongly.
I think Linda has a good point though. This definitely has a time constraint. Like it cannot wait for, if the council were interested in funding this, it can't wait for a general RFP because that funding wouldn't be available until after her position is already eliminated. So in that sense, it does qualify, right? Based on
Yeah.
emergent like time constraints, but
And
yeah.
even with the local share, their recommendations won't go until March. And so their RFP probably won't open until July. And so they might have reviews done by December of 2026. So I mean, even in the local share, that's still too late. I know Andrea is, I want to make sure I hear her. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat, take notes, and share screen all at the same time.
And following the conversation, I don't have anything to add. I share the same comments that everyone else here has expressed. So I do agree though with the plan of moving forward, but with perhaps a shorter period of time. And would also stress the risk, but also see the value of this based on the feedback. So no concerns.
Awesome. I am gonna go ahead and thank you all for this. This was super helpful. I will go ahead and let Sharon back in. All right, next agenda item, oh no, is some revisions to the grantee playbook. And these are highlighted in yellow. So I will just run through these, and these will, again, you guys just making a recommendation to accept them or not. So the first change is coming in the quarterly reporting template. I added a comment bubble. Oh no, I did not. Let me go back. Oh yeah, page 10. I did. So grantees will submit their quarterly reports through the Qualtrics survey link hosted by Omni Institute. The Omni team will validate the responses and export them into the grantees' respective eUnit portal so they can engage with the results and track milestones. That's just the addition that we added here. Accept, deny, clarifying question.
So what is the alternative to doing it differently? I guess that would be my question.
It was left as we didn't know what we were going to do yet, if they were going to do their quarterly reporting in eUna or if Omni was going to continue to use their external tools. We had to wait until we did the eUna build out to see what that looked like. And so now we just have an actual decision to this is where they will, grantees will report through the Qualtrics link that Omni runs. They will validate all the information, and then Omni will import that into the eUna portal for them. And that's because eUna doesn't do validation. So if you say that you served 10 participants, your demographic information should add up to 10. And if it adds up to 12 or it adds up to 8, it doesn't flag it for you. But Qualtrics does that.
Gotcha. Well, then that makes sense to me that would be the process. So.
I'll mark that as an accept. Andrea said makes sense too. So
I agree.
we need to define in the decision tree what is a non-material change and what is a material change. So I've added some language here defining a material change or a non-material change. And that would mean if it's a non-material change, I have delegation to approve it. If it's a material change, it has to go to the executive committee or to full council. If it's a material change and it's less than 10% of a budget, the executive committee can approve it. If it's a material change and more than 10% of a budget, the full council has to approve it. This matters because you're looking at 30 to 60 days to get an approval on something, and that is time constricted. So that means that grantees have to foresee changes probably 60 to 90 days in advance. We're hoping that with eUna and Omni, we can predict those changes, but sometimes they just don't happen. So I will drop this in the chat so folks can follow along. Any questions about this language on material, non-material changes?
So before, whether it was material or non-material, it always went through the full council or executive council, and that this is changing it so that you have the ability to approve non-material changes. That's where my question is. Sorry.
No, the program manager has always had delegation to approve non-material changes. That was just never defined.
Okay. So we're just writing down what has already been happening.
Yeah, and that was the request by legal.
Okay. Well, that makes sense to me then.
That came up too is so like the Jefferson County Sheriff one, is this a material change or a non-material change? I think because the total award doesn't matter about the 2-year award. The total award is so much less. I would call this a non-material change, and then I can approve it myself, that this doesn't have to go to the executive committee. Is that
It makes sense to, yeah, it makes sense to me that if it's less than what the council has already approved, then these are just logistics and semantics, like it's just, like, okay, yeah, we just need to make sure that things are falling into the right category.
That was, we have a new lawyer, Carrie. And so when she saw this, she's like, I think this is fine. I think you can approve it. And Eric Butler, knowing more of the history of the council, was like, the line item is greater than 10%. So even though it's non-material, the line item is greater than 10%. So it has to go to the executive committee, but then also because that minimum number is now 300 instead of 200, it should go to full council. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. So then that's where the conversation came up of we need to define the material and non-material changes and use this as a case study of how are we playing with that 10%. If it's 10% and still non-material, can I approve that? I guess that would be a delegation change. And just report the change to the executive committee.
What you just said there at the very end makes sense to me.
Okay.
That you're still, as long as you're still reporting back to executive committee about any of those changes, then that would make the most sense to me, as long as it's not just something you're doing without any sort of
So you
heads
guys
up.
know, I always come back and recap what I've done in between meetings. Partially because I'm still learning. I'm like, was I allowed to do that? Should I still be allowed to do this? Should I not be allowed to do this anymore? Do we have a policy around this? So yeah, I do recap all of the decisions I make in between meetings for both groups. And I usually do that under the general updates part of our meeting. Any other comments on this?
My experience with federal grants is if it's under 10% budget change, that I was always required to notify the grant administrator that I was doing it. But if it was over, I had to actually submit a revised budget.
Yeah, no matter what, for us, you do have to submit a revised budget, and we just need that for auditing and the fiscal agency. It's more just like who has the decision to approve it. Okay, I'll go on to the next one. I'm sorry, I'm looking at time. We did add prohibited expenses work outside the contract period. We had a grantee. I think that was the only place I added that. Oh, and then right here, here's the example. We had a grantee who has a 1 FTE employee who resigned. And so part of that severance package is that they pay out their fringe benefits. And that would not be an allowable expense in Exhibit E. So we would cover their fringe for the work that they did, but then the grantee is responsible for whatever other payout they had. So we just clarified that language here as an allowable, not allowable expense. Can I accept that change? Okay. Paying lump sum fringe and turnover, that was that. Budget reallocation form bubble. So this is just more clarity of once we have built out the Unisystem, what our budget approval looks like. So we don't need a budget reallocation form because budget reallocation is in EUNA, but we did need, so we don't need this form. I'm keeping it here just in case we do ever need it. But the performance goals amendment feature will be used for scope of work amendments. And then any type of budget amendment will go through the EUNA process, but we did need a staff change request form. And so like if you have 1 FTE and you want to make it 2 half FTE, you have to tell us, because when we're auditing, we're looking for Susie Q, and then we see Susie and Johnny getting paychecks, and that could change fringe allocation. So for auditing purposes, we just want that transparency. And then we also want to know about turnover, because if you have a full-time position that's not getting paid, that could change the timeline that you expense your budget. So we can plan for a 0 additional cost contract extension. It also allows us, because that might be a material change. If you have a full-time position that isn't working, does that change your outcomes and your deliverables? Are they going to be lower because you're down a staff member? So we just need to know that. And so this is the form that people will fill out. And then it would go through the approval process, whether, depending on the change, if that's something I can do, if it has to go to executive committee. So I just created a form. Can I accept this? Yeah. Questions, comments? Cool. Thank you. I have 10 minutes left. Sorry, I'm gonna get through this quickly. I was taking too much time on other stuff. So we need to brainstorm when we're gonna do our next funding opportunity, and we have two options that I came up with. I'm open to ideas. I'm just gonna jump straight into option 2 because that to me is the most feasible option. So we want to do some type of RFA in 2026 so that we could test the AUNA system in terms of its application process, its review process, the rubric process. What does that look like? And we want to keep it kind of small so we have a lot of control over the variables and we're not overwhelmed. So if we only have we have 2 grantees that only have a 1-year contract. If we have them pilot the renewal system, like the application system, we'll have 2 people trying it out. Everyone will score the same 2 applications. There's only 1 rubric that has to be developed. The council would review and approve the application prompts and rubrics in March. EUNA would build it out in April. It doesn't have it on here, but I did get clarity from EUNA that on the April 27th council meeting, the council would onboard to EUNA. So they would come in, they would do a training, everyone would set up their profile, they would score a fake application to get used to the rubric, provide feedback on that. So any changes that have to be made would get done over May. Then renewals would be open June through July. The council would score the 2 renewal applications between August 1st and August 17th. I would do any score mitigation in that week. August 24th, the council would engage in group discussion of the 2 renewal applications, just like we did in our last one. And then we would contract September through November and have a January 1st award date. That would also align us for a bigger cohort 3 RFA, because the council would have to review all the RFA prompts and rubrics in December of 2026. Then we would do the letter of intent window, the month of January. Our January council meeting would be used to reorient to EUNA. February 1st to the 15th, there's an individual review of letters of acknowledgement that are letters of intent, and it's literally a advanced, not advanced. That's the rubric. The council doesn't want to review more than 3 or 4 applications per person, so we would pick the top 16 to 20 letters of intent and invite them to apply for a full application window. We would do application sorting. There would be 2 weeks of individual scoring. The May council meeting would be used for group discussion of those applications in advance. The top 8 would go to group discussion. July meeting would be used for budgets. We would have contracting, and then a January 2028 start date. This is my favorite option. It's long, but it gives us that small window to test out the system for applicants and reviewers. And then it sets us up really nicely for our next big RFA. This one is tight. If we do, like, let's say we just want to do a treatment RFA in 2026, still trying to do letters of intent because we can't have more than 20 applications that get reviewed. The council just doesn't have the capacity to review more than 20 applications. So letters of intent would be in April, letters of intent review in May, full application June and July, review in August. And then again, I have to start contracting like September, October to get contracts aligned with the state calendar. This is a little bit more work. We can make it happen. Any questions, comments? concerns?
Question. Didn't we talk about this before in regard to the work that you have to do in preparation for all this, Chelsea?
Yeah. And so
Okay.
based on that conversation, these are the two options I came up with.
Okay.
Both of these are very feasible for me and the unit team. Option one is a little bit more intensive on the full council, the review committee. Most of them don't feel like they're ready for this RFA. They want the current grantees to have some quarterly reporting, and they want to make sure the strategic plan we have in place is the strategic plan that we want. They want us to build grant infrastructure, have the time to do that. So option one, I'm going to be taking on more awards before I really have all of these policies and procedures.
Yeah.
We can do it. Option two is my favorite.
Yeah, no, I like it too, because I'm all about practice. And, you know, if we have these two grantees who can be our guinea pigs, if you will, and can practice kind of through what it is we need to, then I'm for option two.
On option two, the two grants that will be up for renewal, Advocates for Recovery and Denver Recovery Group. The way I read this, March 23rd, reviews and approves, but there's not a guarantee of that, right? I mean, that's understood.
Option two, March 23rd, the council will review and approve the renewal applications. If this is if they do pick option two, then at the March 23rd council meeting, they will review the application prompt, the questions, and the rubric for approval.
I like option two.
I like them both, but I think it's more about your capacity, Chelsea, and the council to whichever one fits better into their.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's really the capacity of the council. Like I said, I have capacity for both. UNIT confirmed that they could do both. It's really just what the council has capacity for. And how they ended the December meeting, I don't think they're going to want to review applications for project specific things. I think they really want to dig into, is our strategic plan the strategic plan that we want to commit to? They want to see what's happening with budget cuts and the legislative session that's coming up. And so I think that was like the legislative session, May through July, is what they're waiting on. And so we would be putting a call for applications out before legislative session. And so even if we did something small, like just jail focused programs, because that is always in our strategic plan, we're very committed to that. There's not a whole lot of legislation affecting that yet. Even if we just did that one topic area, like we could do that, and the renewal applications, then we're still looking at 16 applications getting reviewed, knowing that the voting members all have other responsibilities. It's an election year for almost like every officer in Jefferson County is running for office, so we'll have so much turnover there. I think they're also thinking of like their jobs outside of GROC, and they would like to just kind of pause GROC if they can, because everything else is so crazy. Yeah. All right, well, I have those recommendations. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate this group. You guys are always such a great sounding board, and I love that community voice that we can give to the council and the voting members. I appreciate your time. So the next meeting is the executive committee meeting on Monday from 1 to 2:30. Then we have the full council meeting on January 26th from 1 to 3. That is virtual only. And it's the exact same agenda. So the same conversation that we had today will just continue to carry through. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Chelsea, can you stay on for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Thank you.